The next thing I know, I have $1 million book of business and the life seems great. I've had a child, a second child, all was wonderful in the world. And then I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So I had like, I guess, 3 main stages of my career. And there were many stages along the way, but I could really parse them into 3 stages. The first was the first 4.5, 5 years. I was miserable. And ultimately, part of it was because I was in the wrong fit law firm for me. It was very hierarchical. It was very traditional. You had to get, approval for everything. Freedom is one of my values. It did not sync up very well with me. Great people, great firm. Probably I wouldn't go back now if I could and change it because I learned a lot there and it's ultimately what got me where I ended up. But it wasn't a great fit. The other thing though was I was also the typical young, at least back then, lawyer who had 0 boundaries, said yes to everything and thought that was how to succeed. And I was miserable as a result. And so I was about 4 years in. There was this very specific time I was driving home. It was Christmas time. Christmas time, by the way, for finance lawyers is by far the busiest, worst time ever because everything has to close year end. So it's not a very fun time for us finance lawyers. And the most wonderful time of the year started playing in the background and all the twinkling lights. And I just burst into tears. And it was late, right? It was very dark. And I come home and my husband is home. And I just start like spewing out all my complaints as per usual. And he kind of just stopped and poor guy had it. I'm sure it was the 100th or more time I'd done it that year. Probably it had done it 100 times the year before. And he just looked at me and was like, Heather, you have a choice. And it didn't, I mean, of course we fought. Of course I did not go to bed happy that night, but it hit a nerve. And I woke up the next day kind of like, yeah, he's right. I have to figure something out here. And so you're laughing, but I mean, it's true. It's never fun.
I'm laughing because just the way you said what your husband said, which was that you have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so many of us, it's so easy to just get stuck on autopilot and just to get stuck on the path that you started on, whether you even meant to or not, and to not even realize how much everything is a decision. Doesn't mean it's easy. Just because you have it doesn't mean you can just,
if it were easy, I don't think it'd be called a decision. That's my opinion.
That is fair. I accept that.
Right? I mean, if it's a real choice, a real decision, it's not going to be, oh, that's the obvious answer.
Sure.
Then you don't feel like it's a choice. It's like, oh, well, that's obvious. Why would I not do that? So, yeah, you're right. And he was right. And that was kind of the impetus for me to starting to figure out, okay, what else could I do? And I thought about, do I want to go in-house? Do I want to quit law? All these things, which was really hard, having thought I wanted to be a lawyer since the age of 11. And ultimately I decided, no, I actually do want to practice law. And I think I want to practice law in a law firm. I'm just not in the right fit firm. And frankly, I probably need a change because this is my fault. I started to realize over the course of the next year, and it took me a while. I did not leave immediately. It took over a year, FYI. I think people think that we had these epiphanies and then boom, the change happens. And that's not really true. Now, what's funny is I started feeling better because I knew I wasn't going to stay there. And I was starting to take action to figure out, well, what's my next step? So I realized, though, that there were actually quite happy lawyers around. And not a majority, sadly, but there were very happy lawyers. And there were differentiations in how they practiced from everybody else. They were very clear about what their boundaries were. They actually had boundaries with clients, not just with colleagues and at their firm. And that's a big one that a lot of lawyers are not good at. They were very particular about clients they would say yes to and clients they would even fire sometimes because they wouldn't uphold their values or they weren't aligned with what they really liked, as a human. They weren't personality fits. They weren't values fits. They were, And so I realized, okay, I need to change that. That's what I need to change. And that's internal. But I've created kind of the monster here. These expectations, and I don't think this is the right firm for me anyway, so I need to move on. So that took a while. And then I was very picky when I was looking around. And ultimately, I found, funny enough, one of the first big law firms that came into Texas offered me a position, and I moved there. And it's hilarious because everybody assumes big law is the big bad horrible thing. At least a lot of people do. And that was by far the best step I could ever have taken. But it was a big law firm that was a little different than a lot of other law firms. At least at the time, they were seriously more entrepreneurial. A lot of firms claim to be. They really were, at least at the time. I don't know if they still are, because I've been there in a while now, but they really were. They let you kind of figure out what you wanted to do, build your own practice. There weren't as many rules. It wasn't so hierarchical. And they really just left you alone as long as you acted like an adult. And so that is where, well, yeah, you're laughing at that too. Yeah, if you did something stupid, they called you out and you were in trouble. But
Well,
otherwise, they
it's
didn't care.
also the way that you actually learn. It's by
Yeah.
being treated as an adult, because by the way, you are one, and
Mm-hmm.
getting the opportunity to do the job and then figure out what you actually need help with, as
Yes.
opposed to being babysat all the time and so scared to do anything without supervision and help because you're so terrified of making a mistake.
Yes. So I basically went there as a senior associate. I practiced for a number of years. I had my first child while I was there, and then before I had my second child, I was promoted to partner there. And I was actually the first associate made partner in the Dallas office because it was a relatively new office. They had just opened, I think, maybe 5 or 6 months before I started there. And it turned out to be a really good place for me because I was able to start building my book even as an associate. Now, I didn't have a big book. I mean, no associate. It's hard. It's hard when you don't have a partner next to your name to actually build a book. But I was able to get a little bit of something, which helped prove my case for partnership. And everything seemed like it was great and wonderful. And so this was the second phase, by the way. I moved over. I was happy. I loved my practice. I was able to start building the practice I wanted. I will note that I was promoted to partnership at the beginning of 2008. And I don't know if you remember what 2008 was. As a finance attorney, really not a good year. Really not a good year. So the book of business, the small little book of business I had was gone by the end of the year. None of those people ever came back into business, by the way, or even got into positions where they could be clients. And 2009, I was looking at my numbers and like, okay, I got to figure something out here. And so I pivoted a little bit. I pivoted into a new finance area that seems like it would be a little bit easier to build a book. And it was. And so things kind of took off. They grew from there. And the next thing I know, I have $1 million book of business and the life seems great. I've had a child, a second child, all was wonderful in the world. And then I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I was, 38 at the time of diagnosis, and my kids were 6 and 2. And that is not something you expect at that point in your life. I mean, I don't know that anybody ever expects it, but you really don't expect it then. And I found out that I have one of the BRCA genes. I'm BRCA2 positive. And that's why. And I was the first probably woman in a long time with the genetic mutation. So like men carry it too. And they are the ones that you occasionally hear get breast cancer. And there are some other cancers they can get or have a higher propensity for getting, but breast cancer is the big one. And we didn't realize that my dad had the gene. His father had the gene, and it was handed down that way. So that was kind of like the big that flew me into the third phase, which is, at first you're just fighting cancer and you're trying to figure out what am I going to live? My prognosis, by the way, was not good. I thankfully found it very early, but we didn't know it at the time.